On today's early edition at 6, the multinational search for the missing AirAsia plane continues. We have the latest. And North Korea celebrates the 3-year anniversary of leader Kim Jong-un's rise to supreme commander of the military. Korea's current account surplus hits a record high in November, surpassing the previous record set in October last year. Plus, the country's industrial output continues to rise for the second straight month. Stay with us for these stories and more.
Very good to have you with us. Welcome to our newscast, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Naehyun Kyung.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us.
We begin with the latest on the search for the AirAsia plane that went missing on a Sunday. Today is the third day of the search, and we've been getting reports over the past couple of hours that possible debris has been spotted in the search area.
Right. For more, we connect to our Connie Kim at the news center. Connie, so Indonesian officials have confirmed that they found parts of the jetliner, we believe?
Well, Daniel and Hyunggang, we're not getting full confirmation yet, but the investigation team says they have spotted a plane-shaped shadow in waters of the Java Sea. Now, officials are saying there is a very high possibility that the debris is part of AirAsia Flight 8501. Malaysia's head of National Search and Rescue Coordinator puts that likelihood at 95%. Now, the possible debris is located about 10 kilometers from the last known position of the jetliner, and some have speculated that the debris is part of an emergency slide or perhaps a door, but officials have not confirmed this yet either. Now, there are other reports that the bodies have now been fully recovered, and there's also been talk of smoke being seen on an island within the search area. Now, Indonesian officials say they are investigating whether that could be related to the missing jetliner, guys.
Connie, this is agonizing, of course, for the families who are waiting word on their loved ones, but it's also difficult for Malaysia as a whole. This is a country that suffered from a number of aviation accidents in 2014.
Right, Hyungja. Well, this is a third Malaysia-based jetliner to be involved in an air accident this year. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared in March in what has become one of the world's biggest unsolved mysteries in recent years. Now, the plane that was carrying nearly 240 people was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing when it disappeared without a trace. And not a single piece of debris has been found yet, still to this day. And in addition, in July, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, which was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, was shot down over Ukraine by what many believe to be a missile fired by pro-Russian rebels. Now, Russia has denied any involvement and has blamed Ukraine. The 298 people have all gone perished. Hyunggang?
Well, thank you, Connie, for that report. Well, Malaysia and the international community is learning from their mistakes, or rather the incidents that happened in the past. This is becoming a very well-orchestrated international effort. And of course, Malaysia's authorities are really dealing with the losses, or rather helping the families of the victims deal with the losses much better this time. Moving on to other news stories we are following today, marks the 3rd anniversary of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un officially taking over control of the regime's military.
Well, as the North celebrates the occasion, North Korea watchers say it's ever more clear that he has a firm grip on power. Lee Ji-yoon has our next report.
North Korea has one of the world's biggest armies, and Tuesday marks the 3rd anniversary since its leader Kim Jong-un was officially appointed to the position of Supreme Commander of the Korean People's Army. With eyes on how the young leader will continue to craft his leadership in the years to come, Kim has largely cemented his place as a powerful military leader. The North's official Korean Central News Agency reported on Monday that Pyongyang held a national meeting to further pledge their loyalty to Kim. At the meeting, Army General Lee Young-gil praised Kim as a, quote, brilliant commander who's training the army to be politically, ideologically, and morally strong. Earlier this year, Kim reshuffled the cabinet, promoting 4-star General Hyun Young-chul as the Minister of the Korean People's Army in an attempt to strengthen his grip on the military. Meanwhile, the KCNA reported on Tuesday that the North Korean leader observed female soldiers' military drills along with his sister, Kim Yo-jong. This is the first time that his sister had joined Kim publicly to oversee military exercises. And analysts say this might signal that she is rising in the ranks in support of her brother's reign. Lee Jun, Arirang News.
Following South Korea's proposal to talk with North Korea, some experts say the potential inter-Korean talks next month could serve as a turning point for improved inter-Korean ties, while others say it will be a mere repetition of the past. Our Hwang Sung-hee had a chance to talk to an expert from the latter group. Take a look.
Will South Korea's surprise proposal for talks give fresh momentum to inter-Korean ties? Professor David Kang at the University of Southern California sees it as a routine exchange of dialogue offers.
My sense is that both South and North Korea are looking for ways that they can improve ties without having to give up too much. And that's the problem, is that both sides are willing to make proposals. But I don't actually see a whole lot of new ideas on the table at this point.
He says as much as the two Koreas may want better ties, neither is willing to risk too much. That's why Pyongyang could consider Seoul's idea of more cultural exchanges in time for next year, which marks the 70th year the peninsula has been divided.
I think there's a lot more possibility for joint cultural events, the Asian Games, a soccer match, events like that. Those are relatively apolitical. And they're relatively easy to do, and they don't involve major policy changes.
Professor Kang sees South Korean Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae's offer as a carefully calculated move ahead of Kim Jong-un's New Year's Day speech, in which he is expected to express his willingness to improve inter-Korean ties.
I think the Minister Ryu, has been searching for a way that he could try and actually move policy on North Korea forward. So I think that in this way, this is not too ambitious, but I think it's a very careful attempt by Minister Ryu. And to that extent, I guess that North Korea would take it seriously. As I said before, I'm not sure that they will actually accept it.
Nonetheless, the expert does not expect Pyongyang to enter a cycle of provocation anytime soon, saying there is nothing particular on the horizon that will bother the regime that much. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Ever since taking office, President Park Geun-hye has made it known to the world that she wants to create a peace park in the demilitarized zone. Here's our Kim Myung-gil with the latest on the administration's push for that project.
It has been more than 60 years now since the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, was created in 1953 through an armistice agreement. In the decades since, the 250-kilometer, 4-kilometer wide buffer zone has gone untouched by mankind, making it an area that holds great interest for experts.
The DMZ presents a lot of challenges that mankind does not really know how to solve. It is the one and only place on Earth where we can pour in our thoughts and use our imaginations to benefit humanity.
The South Korean government has proposed conducting joint research of the ecology within the DMZ to turn the DMZ into a world peace park.
We will set up specific plans for the DMZ World Eco Peace Park and carry out joint surveys of the DMZ ecosystem with international organizations and North Korea.
The South Korean government has earmarked nearly $30 million for the Eco Peace Park project and hopes to conduct a series of on-site surveys next year. The government hopes to begin construction on the envisioned peace park before President Park Geun-hye's term ends in early 2017. Kim Hyung-gil, Arirang News.
The rescue of passengers from a burning ferry in the Adriatic Sea is now completed. The Italian Coast Guard says 10 people died, while some 430 people were brought to safety. But with that number falling short of the original list of 478 names, there are fears that many more could be missing. Officials say they are still in the process of verifying the exact number, adding that boats and helicopters will remain in the area to continue searching for possible victims. The investigation into the exact cause is still underway. The public prosecutor in Italy has requested the seizure of the ship. Staying in the region, lawmakers in Greece have failed to elect a new president in a third and final round of voting. They now have no choice but to hold a snap election. On Monday, Greece's ruling coalition candidate Stavros Dimas received 168 votes out of 300, falling short of the 180 votes needed. Prime Minister Antonis Samaras said general elections will be held at the soonest possible date on January 25th. Opinion polls show the left-wing Syriza party has a chance of winning next month's election. This is intensifying concerns over the country's financial future, though, as the party opposes austerity measures Greece has implemented in recent years.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News. Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Recent reports point out that Korea is losing ground to China in major export items like mobile phones, while local manufacturers are already having a hard time competing with those in Japan. The government has laid out plans to tackle the issue, but they've got a long way to go. Our Hwang Ji-hye explains.
Earlier this year, China-based Xiaomi took the crown in its local market as the biggest smartphone supplier, replacing Samsung Electronics. What's more surprising is that China's major smartphone makers have outpaced Samsung and LG in terms of global market share. And experts say manufacturers in Korea are not just facing risks coming from China, but also Japan, which is introducing aggressive marketing strategies thanks to the weak yen. They add that the overall competitiveness of the Korean manufacturing sector is on the brink of a downward spiral in the face of an aging population and low birth rates. But some pundits say Korea should turn the crisis into an opportunity so that the local manufacturing sector can make another big leap forward. Take the United States, for example. The government has developed 45 research centers aimed at bringing innovation into the domestic manufacturing industry. The Korean government also announced they plan to breathe new life into the manufacturing sector in June, calling it the Manufacturing Industry 3.0 Innovation Strategy. But the detailed plans that the government promised to lay out by the end of this year have not come yet, while local companies hesitate to make investments amid a sluggish domestic economy. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
One of the election pledges made by President Park Geun-hye was to achieve 70% of employment rate. But there are chronic problems the labor market faces here in the nation. If radical changes are not made soon, the labor minister says Korea is going to face much bigger issues down the road. Here's Connie Lee with more.
The push is on for a complete overhaul of the nation's labor laws. In an interview with Korea's Chosun Daily, Lee Ki-kwon, the minister in charge of employment and labor, said that if Korea does not change its labor market regulations by the middle of next year, we will face serious problems. The minister is speaking against the backdrop of chronic labor problems facing the nation, such as a high youth unemployment rate and a large number of contract or temporary workers. Korea's rigid labor market has long been a major issue. Youth unemployment stands at 8%, much higher than the overall jobless rate. And the number of contract workers is more than 6 million. That's 22% of all workers here in Korea. And compare that with the average number of contract workers in other OECD nations, which stands at less than 12%. To tackle this issue, the government has proposed a set of plans to improve working conditions for temporary workers. This includes making sure contract workers aged 35 or older can work at the same company for up to 4 years instead of the current 2. However, these new proposals are being met with criticism from both labor unions and employers.
If the employees get laid off after 4 years of work, where will they go? It will be harder for them to get a job.
This plan places an even greater burden on companies.
While recognizing the need to find some common ground, the Minister of Employment and Labor called for companies to be more flexible in the face of greater global competition. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Korea's current account surplus hit a record high last month, continuing its surplus streak into a 33rd straight month. The Bank of Korea says the surplus reached $11.4 billion in November, surpassing the previous record set in October last year. Both exports and imports dropped from a year earlier, but inbound shipments shrank at a faster rate due to falling oil prices, with imports logging $40 billion and exports slightly over $50 billion. The nation's accumulated current account surplus has totaled almost $82 billion so far this year, nearing its annual forecast of $84 billion. The Korean economy is showing signs of recovery, but picking up a decent head of steam is proving to be quite challenging. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries edged up 0.1% in November from October, marking the second straight month of increase. It did slow from a 0.3% monthly increase in October, though. The rise in November was driven by production in the manufacturing and mining sector that saw output rise 1.3% during this period, helped by demand for cars and semiconductors. However, when compared to November last year, the figure was down 0.5%. Korean builders clinched $66 billion in overseas construction projects this year, the second highest total in the country's history. The Land Ministry says this year's figure was up 1.2% compared to last year, but still fell short of the government's target of $70 billion. The contract spanned across 455 firms and 99 countries. The Middle East was by far the most lucrative place for Korean builders in 2014. Nearly half of the $66 billion secured came from the region, which is a traditional stronghold for Korea's construction industry.
Today was the last trading session of the year, and on this Tuesday, Korea's benchmark KOSPI edged down 0.6% to close at 1,915. To give you a wrap-up of the year, the index started off 2014 above the 2,000 mark and breached 2,090 in July thanks to a government stimulus package to boost growth. But in recent weeks, falling oil prices and disappointing performances from major conglomerates like Samsung and Hyundai have pushed investors away. The KOSPI recorded a near 4.8% loss for the year. The first time the number of overseas visitors broke the 10 million mark was in 2012. Fast forward 2 years, and now we are seeing numbers heading towards 15 million. And experts say the economic effect of that number is equivalent to exporting about 500,000 Hyundai Sonata sedans. For this report, here's Kim Ji.
Korea is fast becoming a hot tourist destination. According to the Korea Tourism Organization, the number of foreign visitors to Korea this year sped past a new record high of 14 million this week. That's up more than 16% from a year ago and marks the fastest pace of growth in a decade. After surpassing the 10 million mark in 2012, thanks in part to the popularity of Korean pop culture, the figure has been on a steady rise. As for nationality, Chinese tourists top the list. Boosted by a spike in visitors from the National Day holiday in October, the total number is expected to surpass 6 million by the end of the year. Japan was next on the list, followed by the United States. Korea also attracted more visitors from Hong Kong, Thailand, and Russia this year compared to last year. So just how much tourism revenue does this translate into? The tourism organization says almost $18 billion, which is up more than 20% from last year. The organization now has a goal of attracting 20 million tourists by 2017, and one thing they're working on is to boost services to cater to the growing number of Chinese visitors.
We plan to enhance the standards of Chinese guides to address the rise in Chinese tourists and improve services at travel agencies that deal with Chinese visitors.
The tourism organization also pledged to step up efforts to satisfy tourists on an individual level so that Korea becomes a destination that people want to visit again. 김민지, Arirang News.
Twins, not an uncommon sight here in Korea. That's because proportion of twins, triplets, and other multiple births among the total number of childbirths has increased threefold in 20 years. Statistics Korea says the so-called multiple births accounted for 3.3% of babies born last year. In 1993, that figure was at 1.1%. The increase is attributed to more Korean women turning to fertility treatments. Obstetricians say while there is just a 0.1% chance of having a multiple birth by natural pregnancy, the chance rises to 25% for pregnancy through in vitro fertilization. Koreans' love for movies is validated. According to the latest number, we apparently went to the cinema more times than anyone in the world this year. Korea's movie theater chain CGV says the average Korean watched 4 movies on the big screen in 2014. The data, based on research from Britain's Screen Digest, has Koreans on top of the global list, followed by people in the US, Australia, France, and the UK, respectively. And for the second year in a row, the number of movie tickets sold in Korea topped 200 million. The Korean film Roaring Currents was the most successful this year at the local box office. And now let's move on to a new exhibition in Seoul.
Well, apparently, this exhibition gives visitors a chance to travel back in time to 18th century France. Park Ji-won takes us to that time period.
Want to time travel to 18th century Paris? Since that's not a realistic option, this exhibition is the next best thing. It's like a personal invitation sent by an aristocrat of the time to visit their beautiful residence. The exhibition has recreated a neoclassic French-style garden and put on display multiple rooms from the period, using real decorative items from 18th century France. From antique furniture such as armchairs, tables and dishes, and even a toilet, visitors feel like they're getting an inside look at the private life of a French nobleman some 300 years ago. The items came from France's prestigious Decorative Arts Museum, which boasts some 150,000 objects.
This year marks the 150th anniversary of the Decorative Arts Museum, located in the western wing of the Louvre Palace. This is the first time that the museum has ever lent its collection out. Curators at the museum have a good impression of Korea for its dynamic art scene.
The 320 items currently on display in Korea don't just show the glamorous lifestyles of the nobility of the time, but also the delicate craftsmanship that remains a key part of France's cultural heritage to this day. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Those were some fancy masks they had on, but
fancy
apparently
toilet.
Fancy toilets as well. Well, apparently a lot more Koreans are going to be wearing different kinds of less pleasant-looking masks in the coming days, right?
Yes, the fine dust continues to give us unpleasant air conditions, but let's connect to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for the latest. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, guys. Well, it's not how we'd want to wrap up the year, but high levels of fine dust continue to stick around. Conditions have eased up compared to the morning, but some regions are still seeing high levels. Seoul is currently seeing 87 micrograms per cubic meter, which is about twice the normal levels, and it looks like the dust should gradually move out by later tonight. Along with the dust, fog and mist is limiting visibility on the roads, and other than that, we are seeing mild winter conditions, slightly warmer than yesterday, but this won't last long as snow or showers are set to begin on the west coast early tomorrow morning before spreading to most parts of the country. Now, parts of Jeollado province may get up to 10 centimeters of heavy snowfall, so keep that in mind if you are making plans to head outdoors to celebrate the New Year's. It looks like tomorrow's snow or showers will be accompanied by strong cold winds, which will lead to a drop in numbers, so we will be greeted by a freezing New Year's morning. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul reaches 1, Daegu hits 4, Busan reaches 9. On to other regions. Jeju reaches 11, Dokdo hits 8, Kumgang drops to -8. Those are the updates we're following at this hour. Back to you guys.
Thanks for that, Bo-kyung. Well, that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for staying with us. If you're tuning in from different time zones, do have a wonderful day. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Na-hyun-kyung. If you're tuning in from Korea, have a great rest of the evening. Daniel and I will be back tomorrow on the last day of 2014. Bye-bye for now.